Imagine finding a single penny in your pocket that quietly connects you to Cold War America, post-war optimism, and one of the most respected eras of U.S. coin production. A penny most people would pass over without a second glance. But to collectors, this coin tells a powerful story. Today, we're diving into the 1952 mint mark Lincoln penny, a small copper coin with a surprisingly big history. The 1952 Lincoln penny was struck at the San Francisco Mint and features the familiar image of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. At first glance, it looks just like millions of other pennies from the mid-20th century. But once you understand its background, its subtle details, and what collectors look for, this humble coin becomes something far more interesting than spare change. To understand this penny, we have to step back into America in 1952. The country was just a few years removed from World War II. Soldiers had returned home, cities were growing, suburbs were expanding, and optimism was in the air. At the same time, the Cold War was beginning to shape politics, culture, and daily life. The U.S. Mint was producing massive amounts of coins to support a booming economy, and pennies were among the most heavily used coins of all. The Lincoln cent design had already been around for more than 4 decades by 1952. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure like Liberty. By 1952, Lincoln's face had become one of the most familiar images in American life, appearing in wallets, cash registers, and coin jars across the country. That year, pennies were struck at 3 mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Philadelphia carry no mint mark, Denver coins have a small D, and San Francisco coins feature a small S just below the date. That tiny S on the 1952 penny is what makes today's coin special. It tells us the coin was produced on the West Coast, in a mint known for lower production numbers and, in many cases, better strike quality. The San Francisco Mint in the early 1950s played an important role in supplying coins to the western United States. While it didn't always produce the highest number of coins, it often struck pieces that collectors today appreciate for their sharp details and strong surfaces. In 1952, the San Francisco Mint produced just over 137 million Lincoln cents. That might sound like a lot, but compared to other mintages of the time, it was relatively modest, especially when you consider how many have been lost, damaged, or worn down through decades of circulation. Let's take a closer look at what makes the 1952 penny unique in terms of design and materials. Like all Lincoln cents from 1909 through 1982, this coin is made mostly of copper, about 95%, with the remaining 5% made up of zinc and tin. This gives the coin its warm reddish-brown color when freshly struck and its darker tone as it ages. On the front of the coin, you'll see Victor David Brenner's famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln faces to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" across the top, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1952 to the right. Just beneath the date, you'll find the small S mint mark, the key identifier for this version of the coin. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, which replaced the earlier wheat ears design in 1959, but was still nearly a decade away in 1952. Weight correction: in 1952, the reverse still featured the wheat ears design, not the Lincoln Memorial. That's an important detail. The back of the 1952 penny shows 2 wheat stalks curving along the left and right sides, framing the words 1 cent in the center and United States of America above it. At the top, the motto EPLURIBUS UNUM stretches across the rim. This wheat penny reverse design had been used since 1909 and is one of the most beloved designs in American coinage. For many collectors, wheat pennies represent a golden age of American money, when coins were made of solid copper and carried classic, timeless artwork. Now let's talk about why the 1952 penny matters to collectors today. On the surface, it's not one of the rarest Lincoln cents ever made. You won't hear about it selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars like a 1943 copper cent or a 1909 VDB. But what makes the 1952 special is its combination of age, mint mark, condition rarity, and historical appeal. Most 1952 pennies were heavily circulated. They passed through countless hands in grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines, and piggy banks. Over time, many were scratched, bent, corroded, or simply lost. Finding one today in worn condition isn't difficult, but finding one in high-grade, nearly untouched condition is much more challenging. And in coin collecting, condition can make all the difference. Another factor that adds interest is the quality of strikes from the San Francisco Mint during this era. Many coins from this mint show sharp details, especially in Lincoln's hair, cheekbone, and coat, as well as in the wheat ears on the reverse. Collectors look for strong, crisp lines and full design elements, which can significantly increase a coin's appeal and value. There are also known errors and varieties associated with the 1952 penny, which add another layer of excitement. Some examples show doubled dies, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. Others may show off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks. While most 1952 pennies are normal strikes, error coins can command much higher prices, especially if the mistake is dramatic and clearly visible. So how valuable is a 1952 Lincoln penny today? The answer depends heavily on condition. In heavily worn condition, with smooth surfaces and faded details, these coins typically sell for just a few cents to maybe $1 or $2. That might not sound exciting, but remember, this is still a 70-plus-year-old coin made of real copper, and many people enjoy collecting them simply for their history. In better condition, however, the story changes. A 1952 penny in uncirculated condition, meaning it shows no signs of wear and still has much of its original mint luster, can sell for anywhere from $10 to $40, depending on the quality of the strike and the color of the copper. Coins with strong red coloration, known as red examples, are especially desirable because most copper coins darken over time. At the top end of the scale, high-grade certified examples can sell for much more. Auction records show that pristine 1952 pennies graded in the highest mint state levels have sold for several $100s, and in rare cases, over $1,000. These coins are exceptional survivors, often stored carefully for decades and never used in circulation. Error coins from this year and mint can bring even stronger prices. For example, a well-defined double die or major off-center strike could sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the severity of the error and overall condition. These are the kinds of finds that collectors dream about when searching through old coin rolls or inherited collections. Now let's talk about how to identify a genuine 1952 penny and avoid fakes or altered coins. First, look closely at the date and mint mark. The date should read 1952, and just below it, slightly to the right, should be a small but clear S on genuine coins. The mint mark will appear natural and well integrated into the surface of the coin, not raised strangely or sitting on top of the metal. Be cautious of coins where the mint mark looks uneven, oddly shaped, or scratched into the surface. Some altered coins start as Philadelphia issues with no mint mark, and someone adds an S to try to increase value. Under magnification, these fake mint marks often look rough, irregular, or poorly aligned compared to genuine examples. Next, check the weight and feel. A real 1952 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and feel solid and dense in the hand due to its copper composition. If the coin feels unusually light, thin, or magnetic, it may not be genuine. Also look at the overall design details. Lincoln's portrait should appear balanced and sharp, with clear facial features and readable lettering. The wheat ears on the reverse should show fine lines and natural curves. While wear can soften these details, the overall style and proportions should still look correct. If you think you've found a valuable example, especially one in high condition or with a potential error, having it authenticated and graded by a professional coin grading service is often the safest way to confirm its legitimacy and market value. Now let's explore some fun and surprising facts about the 1952 S penny. One interesting detail is that in 1952, pennies were still being used heavily in everyday transactions. A loaf of bread might cost around 15 cents, a gallon of gas about 20 cents, and a movie ticket under $1. That means a single penny actually had noticeable buying power, far more than it does today. Another fun fact is that many 1952 pennies were stored in jars, drawers, and piggy banks by families who lived through the Great Depression and World War II. These generations often saved coins instinctively, and as a result, many collections today still include rolls of wheat pennies from the 1940s and 1950s, including the 1952 S. Collectors also love this coin because it represents the final full decade of the wheat penny era. The wheat design would only last until 1958, when it was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959. That makes the 1952 S part of the closing chapter of one of America's longest-running and most recognizable coin designs. Another surprising detail is that San Francisco Mint coins from the early 1950s are often better struck than their Denver counterparts. Collectors frequently notice sharper hair detail on Lincoln and stronger wheat lines on the reverse, making these coins especially attractive even in circulated grades. So why do collectors love the 1952 S Lincoln penny today? Part of the appeal is nostalgia. This coin reminds people of a time when American money felt heavier, more solid, and more connected to the nation's history. It's a piece of everyday life from the early 1950s, when diners, drive-in theaters, and corner stores were part of the American experience. Another reason is accessibility. Unlike ultra-rare coins that cost tens of thousands of dollars, the 1952 S penny allows new collectors to own a piece of history without breaking the bank. You can find one in decent condition for just a few dollars, yet still enjoy the thrill of holding a coin that circulated during one of the most important periods in modern American history. For experienced collectors, the challenge comes in finding high-grade examples, red copper survivors, or rare error varieties. These coins represent the best of what the mint produced, and assembling a top-quality set of wheat pennies often includes searching for the finest possible 1952 S. There's also something satisfying about the small details. That tiny S under the date tells a story of where the coin was made, who might have used it, and how it traveled through the economy before ending up in someone's collection decades later. It's a reminder that even the smallest objects can carry powerful connections to the past. Now imagine this. Somewhere right now, in a drawer, jar, or old box of coins, there could be a 1952 S penny sitting quietly, waiting to be rediscovered. Maybe it's worn and brown, or maybe, just maybe, it's a bright red, sharply struck example that never saw circulation. Or perhaps it carries a rare error that went unnoticed for more than 70 years. That's what makes coins like this so exciting. They're not locked away in museums or vaults. They're part of everyday life, hiding in plain sight, and anyone can stumble across one. The 1952 S Lincoln penny may not be the most famous coin in American history, but it represents something just as meaningful. It reflects a growing nation, a booming economy, and a time when even a single cent mattered. It connects us to Abraham Lincoln, to post-war America, and to the people who carried this coin in their pockets more than 7 decades ago. So the next time you see an old penny, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that small mint mark. You might be holding more than spare change. You might be holding a piece of American history, and who knows, that simple copper coin you almost ignored could turn out to be something special. That's the magic of coin collecting. Every coin has a story, and sometimes the most ordinary-looking ones turn out to be the most fascinating of all. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket and realizing it was made almost 70 years ago, during a time when America was changing fast. A small coin, barely noticed by most people, but hiding a story, history, and sometimes real value. Today, we're uncovering the surprising truth behind the 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions own, but very few truly understand. The 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in Philadelphia during the mid-1950s. If your penny from 1956 doesn't have a letter under the date, that's normal. Philadelphia didn't use mint marks on cents at the time. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary old penny. Abraham Lincoln faces right on the front, and 2 wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent on the back. But behind this simple design is a fascinating chapter in American history, and in some cases, serious collector interest. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the year 1956. The United States was in the middle of a post-war boom. Families were buying new homes, televisions were becoming common, and the interstate highway system was just beginning to take shape. The country was optimistic, growing, and spending, which meant money was moving fast. The U.S. Mint needed massive numbers of coins for daily commerce, and pennies were no exception. That year, the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 420 million Lincoln cents, making the 1956 penny one of the more widely circulated coins of the decade. But this coin also represents the final years of an era. The wheat cent design, first introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, was nearing its end. Just 2 years later, in 1959, the reverse design would change to the Lincoln Memorial, retiring the wheat stalks forever. That makes the 1956 penny part of the last chapter of one of the most beloved designs in American coin history. The coin itself is made mostly of copper, about 95% copper, with the rest made up of zinc and tin. It weighs 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. When freshly minted, it had a bright reddish-orange color, but over time, most examples have toned down to brown or deep chocolate shades. Some still survive in brilliant red condition, and those are the ones collectors get especially excited about. On the front of the coin, you'll see Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln, which has been used longer than any other portrait on U.S. coinage. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, to the right is the date, and along the rim at the top is In God We Trust. On the reverse, the words 1 cent and United States of America are framed by 2 wheat ears, with E pluribus unum at the top. It's a simple, balanced design that feels both classic and timeless. Now, you might be wondering, with over 420 million made, how could this coin possibly be rare or valuable? The truth is, most 1956 pennies are only worth a few cents over face value, especially if they're heavily worn. But collectors don't just chase rarity, they chase condition, beauty, and mistakes. And that's where the 1956 penny becomes much more interesting. In circulated condition, meaning coins that show wear from everyday use, a 1956 penny might sell for 2 to 10 cents. But in uncirculated condition, meaning the coin never entered circulation and still has sharp details and original luster, prices rise quickly. A nice uncirculated brown example might sell for a few dollars. A red-brown example might bring $10 to $20. But a full red example, with original mint color and no spots or damage, can sell for $50 or more, especially if professionally graded. And then there are the top-tier examples. High-grade coins graded by major services like PCGS or NGC have sold at auction for hundreds of dollars. Some of the finest known 1956 pennies in near-perfect condition have reached prices over $1,000, simply because so few survive in that state. That's the power of condition in the coin world. Two pennies from the same year can be worth wildly different amounts. But condition isn't the only factor. Errors and varieties make this coin even more exciting. During the busy production schedules of the 1950s, mistakes happened at the mint. Some 1956 pennies were struck off-center, leaving part of the design missing. Others show doubled lettering, where parts of the date or inscriptions appear slightly shadowed or doubled due to misaligned dies. There are also clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing because the metal blank wasn't cut correctly. One of the most desirable errors involves doubled dies, especially on the date or the word Liberty. These are not damage, they happen during the die-making process and are considered legitimate mint errors. While major doubled die varieties from 1956 are rare, smaller doubling examples still attract strong collector interest and can sell for dozens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on how clear the doubling is. There are also repunched mint mark varieties on some Lincoln cents, but since Philadelphia pennies didn't carry mint marks in 1956, this doesn't apply here. Still, die cracks, die breaks, and other striking abnormalities are common enough that searching through rolls of old wheat pennies remains exciting for collectors today. Let's talk real-world prices. A 1956 Lincoln cent graded M-66 red by PCGS has sold at auction for over $600. Higher-grade examples have crossed the $1,000 mark. Even error coins like off-center strikes or dramatic die breaks regularly sell for $50 to $300 depending on appearance and condition. These aren't imaginary prices or internet rumors. These are real auction results from collectors who recognize something special in what most people would overlook. So how do you know if your 1956 penny is real, valuable, or just ordinary? First, check the date. It should clearly read 1956, and there should be no mint mark below the date. If you see a D or S, something's wrong. Philadelphia was the only mint that struck pennies without mint marks, and Denver and San Francisco pennies from 1956 always carry their letters. Next, look at the weight and color. A real 1956 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and have a copper appearance. If it looks silvery or unusually light, it may have been plated or altered. Also examine the details. The lettering should be sharp, not mushy. The wheat stalks should show individual lines, not blobs. If the coin looks too soft or blurry, it could be damaged, heavily worn, or possibly fake. Magnification is your friend. Use a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass to inspect the date, lettering, and edges. Look for doubling, cracks, or unusual shapes. But be careful, scratches, dents, and corrosion are damage, not mint errors. Real errors look intentional and smooth, not jagged or random. If you think you've found something special, don't clean the coin. Cleaning almost always lowers value, sometimes dramatically. Collectors prefer original surfaces, even if they're dark or spotted. If the coin seems promising, consider having it evaluated by a professional coin dealer or sending it to a grading service. Now for some fun facts. In 1956, the average American wage was about $2 per hour, and gas cost around 25 cents per gallon. That means this penny could buy more than it can today, but it was still considered small change. Yet today, that same penny might be worth hundreds of dollars depending on condition and rarity. It's a reminder that value isn't always obvious in the moment. Sometimes it grows quietly over time. Another interesting detail is that many 1956 pennies were saved by the public simply because people liked wheat cents and knew the design was nearing retirement. As a result, more uncirculated examples survive from the mid to late 1950s than from earlier decades. But truly perfect ones are still extremely rare, because even small marks from bags, machines, or handling prevent coins from reaching the highest grades. The 1956 penny is also part of the longest-running portrait in U.S. coinage history. Abraham Lincoln's face has appeared on the cent continuously since 1909, longer than any other person on any U.S. coin. That alone gives every Lincoln cent, including the 1956 issue, a special place in American numismatic history. Collectors love this coin today for several reasons. First, it's affordable. You can own a piece of American history for just a few cents, or build a beautiful high-grade collection without spending a fortune. Second, it's accessible. Millions still exist in old jars, albums, and collections, making treasure hunting possible for beginners and seasoned collectors alike. Third, it represents the final years of the wheat cent era, which many consider the most elegant and classic period of U.S. coin design. For some collectors, the appeal is emotional. This is the kind of penny their parents or grandparents used every day. It's the coin that jingled in lunch money, paid for candy, and sat in old coffee cans on kitchen counters. Holding a 1956 penny is like holding a small, tangible piece of mid-century America. And for others, the appeal is the hunt. Searching through rolls, jars, or inherited collections, hoping to find a brilliant red uncirculated example or a rare mint error, turns a simple coin into a potential treasure. That thrill never really fades, no matter how long someone has been collecting. So the next time you come across a 1956 penny, don't dismiss it. Look closely. Check its color. Study its details. You might be holding a common coin, or you might be holding something far more interesting. At the very least, you're holding a piece of American history, struck during a time of optimism, growth, and change. Small coins often carry big stories, and the 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is proof of that. From its role in everyday life during the 1950s to its place in collections today, this humble cent continues to capture curiosity, inspire collectors, and reward those who take the time to look a little closer. And who knows? The next penny you find in your pocket, drawer, or old jar might not just be spare change. It might be a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary objects hide the most extraordinary stories. Imagine reaching into a jar of loose change, pulling out a regular-looking penny, and discovering it could be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's made of gold, not because it's ancient, but because of a tiny letter most people never notice. Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1969 D mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, yet carries a history and mystery that continues to excite collectors decades later. The 1969 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck by the United States Mint in Denver. The small D beneath the date tells us where it was made. At the time, millions of pennies were produced every year, and most were used, lost, or spent without a second thought. But some coins from this year and mint location stand out, not because they were meant to be special, but because of how history, design, and chance combine to create something collectors still search for today. To understand this penny, we need to step back to the late 1960s. The United States was going through enormous change. The space race was in full swing, the Vietnam War was shaping global politics, and everyday life was shifting fast. The U.S. Mint, meanwhile, was working hard just to keep up with demand for coins. Inflation was rising, and Americans needed more cents for daily transactions. Vending machines, parking meters, and public transportation systems all depended on small change. As a result, the mint produced billions of pennies during this era, and 1969 was no exception. The Lincoln cent itself had already been in circulation for 60 years by then. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Designed by Victor David Brenner, it became the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 1969, Lincoln's portrait was deeply familiar to Americans. On the front of the coin, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with the mint mark to the right. On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959, with the words United States of America and 1 cent. Now let's talk about what this coin is made of. In 1969, pennies were still composed mostly of copper. Each coin contained about 95% copper and 5% zinc, with a small amount of tin. This gives the coin its warm reddish color when new. These copper pennies feel heavier than modern cents, which are mostly zinc and only copper-plated. If you've ever compared an old penny to a new one, you might notice the difference in weight and sound when dropped. That's because modern pennies, introduced in 1982, are much lighter and less dense. The design of the 1969 D penny looks simple, but it holds small details that collectors study closely. Lincoln's portrait shows fine hair lines, a strong jawline, and a calm expression. The lettering around the rim is sharp on well-struck coins, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back features tiny columns and even a small seated statue of Lincoln inside the building, visible with magnification. These fine details are important because the better preserved the coin, the more valuable it can be. At first glance, the 1969 D penny might seem like just another common coin. After all, the Denver Mint produced more than 4 billion cents that year. Yes, billion, with a B that alone suggests that rarity isn't what makes this coin special. But in the world of coin collecting, rarity doesn't always mean low mintage. Sometimes, rarity means unusual condition, unusual errors, or connection to famous varieties that make collectors look twice. One of the biggest reasons the 1969 D penny gets attention is because of the legendary 1969's double die penny, a famous error coin worth tens of thousands of dollars. While that famous variety came from San Francisco and not Denver, its story has made collectors curious about all 1969 pennies. People searching through old chain often hope they've stumbled onto something rare, and that curiosity naturally extends to the Denver version. While the 1969 D penny does not have a known major double die variety like the San Francisco issue, it still has its own appeal, especially in high-grade condition or with minor mint errors. Let's talk about errors, because this is where ordinary coins can suddenly become exciting. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin-making process. This can include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak strikes, or misaligned dies. A 1969 D penny struck off-center might show part of the design missing, while another might have a curved bite taken out of the edge, known as a clipped planchet. These errors are unpredictable, and that randomness is part of what collectors love. Even though most 1969 D pennies are normal, those with visible errors can command strong premiums over face value. Condition is another major factor. Most 1969 D pennies were heavily circulated, meaning they were used in everyday transactions for years. These coins often show wear on Lincoln's face, flattening of details, and dull surfaces. But some coins were pulled from circulation early or saved in rolls, and those coins can still look nearly new. Collectors grade coins on a scale, and those in the highest mint state grades, meaning they show no signs of wear, can be surprisingly valuable, even if the coin itself is common in lower grades. So how valuable can a 1969 D penny actually be? In average circulated condition, it's usually worth just 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents to someone who collects copper. But in uncirculated condition, the story changes. A bright, sharply struck 1969 D penny with no wear can sell for several dollars, sometimes more if it's graded by a professional service. Coins graded in the highest ranges, with exceptional luster and perfect surfaces, have sold at auction for well over $100, and in some cases, even more. For example, certified mint state examples graded at the very top of the scale have sold in the $200 to $500 range, depending on eye appeal and demand at the time of sale. These prices may not sound life-changing, But remember, this is for a penny that originally cost 1 cent and was mass-produced by the billions. That kind of return captures the imagination of collectors and everyday people alike. Error coins can go even higher. A genuine 1969 D penny with a dramatic off-center strike, a major die crack, or a clipped planchet can sell anywhere from $20 to several $100s, depending on how unusual and visually striking the error is. The more obvious the mistake, the more exciting it is for collectors. Now let's talk about how to identify a real 1969 D penny and avoid confusion or disappointment. First, check the date and mint mark. The date should read 1969, and just below the date, slightly to the right, you should see a small letter D that confirms it was minted in Denver. Next, examine the weight. A genuine 1969 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter, it may be damaged, altered, or possibly from a different era. Look closely at the design details. Lincoln's portrait should be sharp, especially around the hair and beard. The lettering should be clean and well-formed, not blurry or misshapen unless the coin has a legitimate error. On the reverse side, check the Lincoln Memorial. You should be able to see at least some of the columns and, with magnification, the tiny statue of Lincoln inside the building. If you think you've found something unusual, such as doubling, strange shapes, or missing details, it's best to compare your coin to known examples online or consult a reputable coin dealer. Be cautious of altered coins. Sometimes people try to fake errors by carving, filing, or damaging coins to make them look unusual. Genuine mint errors typically show smooth, natural metal flow rather than rough or scratched surfaces. Here's a fun fact about the 1969 penny year in general. This was one of the last years before the mint made major changes in production quality and processes. The late 1960s saw experimentation and improvements in die-making technology, and these transitions sometimes led to unexpected varieties and quirks. Even though the Denver Mint's 1969 pennies are mostly standard, they still reflect a fascinating period in U.S. minting history. Another surprising detail is how many people unknowingly carry or discard collectible coins. Because the 1969 D penny looks so ordinary, it often goes unnoticed. Yet some collectors have found high-grade examples sitting untouched in old rolls, inherited coin jars, or forgotten desk drawers. That sense of hidden treasure is one of the most powerful attractions in coin collecting. It's the idea that history and value might be hiding in plain sight. Collectors also love the 1969 D penny because it represents the classic copper era of American cents. Many collectors prefer Pennies 1,982 pennies because of their solid copper content and traditional feel. Holding one of these coins feels different than holding a modern cent. There's a sense of weight, warmth, and connection to a time when everyday money was made from more substantial materials. The Lincoln Memorial reverse design adds to the appeal. Introduced in 1959, it was the first time a U.S. coin showed a building rather than a symbolic figure on the back of a circulating coin. The design is both elegant and meaningful, honoring a president remembered for unity and leadership during one of the most difficult periods in American history. The fact that Lincoln himself can be seen inside the memorial on the coin is a small but powerful artistic touch. Another reason collectors are drawn to this coin is the challenge it presents. Because most 1969 D pennies are common, collectors compete for the best examples. Finding one with perfect surfaces, blazing luster, and sharp strikes is harder than it sounds. Even small marks, scratches, or dullness can reduce a coin's grade and value. This makes high-grade examples especially desirable, turning what seems like a simple coin into a serious pursuit. There's also a psychological side to collecting coins like the 1969 D penny. It's approachable. You don't need thousands of dollars to get started. Anyone can check their change, search old jars, or look through inherited collections. That accessibility brings new people into the hobby, and coins like this serve as gateways into deeper interest in U.S. history, economics, and art. One more interesting detail. In 1969, the Mint did not produce proof pennies in Denver. Proof coins were struck in San Francisco and sold directly to collectors in special sets. This means every 1969 D penny you encounter was meant for circulation, making high-quality survivors even more impressive. A coin that looks nearly new after more than 5 decades tells a story of careful storage, luck, and survival against the odds. Collectors also appreciate how the 1969 D penny connects to broader trends in American coinage. Just a few years later, in 1982, the composition of the penny changed to mostly zinc, making copper cents like this one a thing of the past. In that sense, the 1969 D penny belongs to the final chapter of the classic copper cent era, adding to its nostalgic appeal. So why does this coin continue to matter today? Because it reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Something small and ordinary can carry history, craftsmanship, and sometimes even surprising worth. It invites people to slow down, look closely, and appreciate the details that often go unnoticed. In a world of digital transactions and cashless payments, holding a copper penny from 1969 feels like touching a piece of everyday American life from another time. And here's the most exciting part. There are still countless 1969 D pennies out there. They're in old piggy banks, forgotten jars, dresser drawers, and collections passed down through families. Every time someone looks through their change, there's a tiny chance they'll find a high-grade example, a striking error, or simply a beautiful piece of history that sparks curiosity and wonder. So the next time you see a penny dated 1969 with a small D beneath the date, don't rush past it. Take a moment, turn it over, look at Lincoln's face, study the memorial. Think about where that coin has been and what it's witnessed over more than half a century of American life. It may not make you rich, but it might give you something just as valuable, a connection to history, a sense of discovery, and the thrill of finding something special where you least expected it. And who knows, the next great coin story might already be sitting in your pocket, waiting for you to notice. Most people have held this coin in their hands and never gave it a second thought. But what if I told you that a simple 1975 penny sitting in a jar, drawer, or old piggy bank could be hiding a story that collectors around the country still chase today? Let's talk about the 1975 no mint mark Lincoln penny. This is a 1-cent coin that was made in the United States during a time of big change in American history. It looks ordinary at first glance, but once you understand what it represents, how it was made, and what makes certain examples valuable, this small copper coin becomes something much more interesting. In 1975, the United States Mint was producing hundreds of millions of pennies each year. Inflation was rising, gas prices were climbing, and everyday Americans were feeling the pressure of a changing economy. The penny was still a key part of daily life, used in cash registers, parking meters, and grocery stores. That year, pennies were struck at 3 main locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins made in Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark, which is why this coin is known as the 1975 no mint mark penny. The Lincoln cent design had already been around for more than 65 years by that point. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person instead of a symbolic figure. By 1975, Americans were deeply familiar with Lincoln's face on the front of the penny, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back had been standard since 1959. This design connected everyday pocket change to American history in a quiet but powerful way. The 1975 penny was made mostly of copper. At that time, pennies were composed of about 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them their warm reddish-brown color when new. These coins weighed about 3.11 grams and had a solid, heavy feel compared to modern pennies. Just a few years later, in 1982, the mint would switch to copper-plated zinc pennies to save money, making earlier copper cents like the 1975 especially interesting to collectors today. On the front of the coin, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the word Liberty to the left and the year 1975 to the right. Above his head is the phrase "In God We Trust." On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall in the center, with United States of America at the top and 1 cent at the bottom. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial, one of the smallest detailed figures ever used on a U.S. coin. At first glance, millions of these pennies look exactly the same, but collectors know that value doesn't always come from age alone. It comes from condition, rarity, and sometimes mistakes made during the minting process. And that's where the 1975 no-mint mark penny becomes especially interesting. Most 1975 pennies from Philadelphia are common in circulated condition. You'll still find them today in coin jars, old rolls, and inherited collections. In worn condition, they're usually worth just 1 or 2 cents. But in high-grade condition, especially if they were never circulated and still look bright and clean, their value can increase dramatically. Collectors grade coins on a scale, with higher numbers meaning better condition. A 1975 penny in uncirculated condition, with full detail and original mint luster, can be worth several dollars. But the real excitement comes from coins that reach the highest levels of preservation. Some examples graded at the very top levels by professional grading services have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars at auction. But condition alone isn't the only thing that matters. Errors and varieties play a major role in making certain 1975 pennies rare and valuable. During the minting process, coins are struck at high speed using massive presses, and sometimes mistakes happen. These mistakes can create coins that stand out from the rest, and collectors love them. One known type of error is the off-center strike, where the coin is not properly aligned during striking. This results in part of the design being missing, shifted, or cut off. Some 1975 pennies with off-center strikes have sold for $50, $100, or more, depending on how dramatic the error is and how clear the date remains. Another valuable error is the double die, where the coin design is accidentally impressed twice in slightly different positions on the die. This creates a doubled appearance on letters or numbers, especially noticeable in words like Liberty or In God We Trust. While not extremely common for 1975, confirmed double die examples can bring strong prices from collectors. Then there are clipped planchets, where a piece of metal is missing from the edge of the coin before it's struck. These coins often have a curved or straight missing section and are highly collectible. A genuine clipped planchet 1975 penny can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on size and condition. Another category that collectors watch for is wrong planchet errors. These happen when a coin is struck on the wrong type of metal blank. For example, a penny struck on a dime blank or foreign coin blank would weigh differently and look unusual. These errors are extremely rare and can be worth thousands of dollars if authenticated. In terms of real-world examples, high-grade 1975 no-mint mark pennies have sold at major auctions for impressive prices. Some examples graded MS67 or higher by professional services have sold for several $100s. In rare cases, nearly perfect examples have crossed into the four-figure range, showing just how valuable a modern-looking penny can become when preserved in exceptional condition. Error coins tell an even more dramatic story. Off-center strikes, major die breaks, and other unusual minting mistakes from 1975 have sold for $200, $500, and sometimes more, depending on how eye-catching and rare they are. These are the coins that turn heads at coin shows and spark conversations among collectors. But how do you know if the 1975 penny you're holding is real, valuable, or something special? First, look at the date and mint mark area. A genuine 1975 no mint mark penny will simply show 1975 on the front, with no letter underneath the date. That means it was made in Philadelphia. The absence of a mint mark is normal for that year and location. Next, check the weight. A genuine 1975 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, that could indicate damage, wear, or possibly an unusual planchet. Using a small digital scale can help you get a more accurate reading. Then, look closely at the details. Check Lincoln's face, the lettering, and the memorial on the back. Coins with sharp, clean details and little to no wear are far more desirable than those that are faded or scratched. Also, watch for doubling in the letters or numbers, missing sections, unusual shapes, or odd textures. These could be signs of mint errors. It's also important to be cautious about altered coins. Some people try to fake errors by damaging coins intentionally, cutting edges, or sanding surfaces. Real mint errors usually show smooth, natural metal flow and consistent wear patterns, not sharp tool marks or rough edges. When in doubt, professional grading services can authenticate and grade your coin. One fun fact about the 1975 penny is that it represents the final years of full copper cents in everyday circulation. Just a few years later, rising copper prices forced the mint to change the composition of the penny, making postminus 1,982 cents mostly zinc with only a thin copper coating. That makes the 1975 penny part of the last generation of solid copper U.S. cents, and many collectors appreciate it for that reason alone. Another interesting detail is that billions of Lincoln Memorial pennies were produced between 1959 and 2008, making it one of the longest-running reverse designs in U.S. coin history. The 1975 penny is right in the heart of that era, representing mid-1970s America, when cash was king and every cent still mattered in daily transactions. Collectors also enjoy searching through rolls of old pennies from the 1970s because the odds of finding uncirculated examples, attractive toning, or subtle errors are higher than with much older coins. The 1975 no mint mark penny is especially popular among roll hunters and beginner collectors because it's affordable, easy to find, and full of potential surprises. There's also something deeply satisfying about holding a coin that has passed through countless hands over nearly 50 years. This penny may have been used to buy a newspaper, dropped into a tip jar, or tucked away in a child's collection decades ago. Each one carries a silent story of everyday American life, making it more than just spare change. Collectors love the 1975 no mint mark penny not because it's always rare, but because it offers opportunity. Most examples are common, but the few exceptional ones stand out dramatically. It's the thrill of the hunt that keeps people searching their change jars and coin rolls, hoping to find that one perfect specimen or unusual error that turns an ordinary penny into something special. This coin also serves as a reminder that valuable collectibles don't always look valuable at first glance. Many people assume only very old coins or gold and silver pieces can be worth serious money. But sometimes, it's the small copper cent from your childhood that surprises you the most. As the years go by, high-quality examples of 1975 pennies become harder to find. Coins that once circulated freely are now scratched, worn, or lost, leaving fewer pristine survivors behind. That slow disappearance is what gives well-preserved coins their rising value and growing collector interest. So the next time you see a 1975 penny without a mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check its condition. Look for unusual features. You might just be holding a small piece of American history, or even a collectible that's quietly gained value over time. And here's the fascinating part. Most people walk past pennies on the ground without stopping. But collectors know that sometimes the smallest coins tell the biggest stories. The 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is proof that history, craftsmanship, and value can exist in the palm of your hand. So before you empty that old jar of change or roll up those loose coins, pause for a moment. That ordinary-looking penny might not be ordinary at all. And sometimes, the most interesting treasures are the ones we've been carrying around without even knowing it. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second thought. But some 1976 Lincoln cents have quietly sold for prices that shock even long-time collectors. And the difference between a 1-cent coin and a valuable one often comes down to details so small you might miss them entirely. Today we're diving into the 1976 mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, yet holds a fascinating story tied to America's bicentennial era, changing metals, and hidden varieties that collectors still search for today. The 1976 penny was made at the Denver Mint and features Abraham Lincoln on the front, just like Lincoln cents have since 1909. On the back, it carries the Lincoln Memorial design that was used from 1959 to 2008. There's nothing flashy about it. No special design for the bicentennial. No dramatic redesign. And yet, this humble cent reflects one of the most interesting periods in modern U.S. coin history, a time when the country was celebrating its 200th birthday, while the mint was quietly adjusting how America's money was made. To understand this coin, we need to rewind to the mid-1970s. The United States was coming out of economic turbulence. Inflation was high, metal prices were unstable, and the cost of producing coins was rising. Just a few years earlier, in 1974, the mint had briefly experimented with aluminum cents because copper prices were climbing. Those aluminum pennies were never released to the public, but they signaled something important. The days of solid copper cents were coming to an end. By 1976, pennies were still officially made of 95% copper, just like they had been for decades. But behind the scenes, the mint was already preparing for the switch to copper-plated zinc cents that would officially begin in 1982. So the 1976 penny sits at the end of the classic copper era, one of the last years when U.S. cents were heavy, solid copper coins instead of lightweight zinc cores. The Denver Mint struck a massive number of pennies in 1976. Over 4.2 billion 1976 cents were produced, making it one of the most common Lincoln pennies in circulation. That alone might make it seem boring. But in coin collecting, rarity doesn't always mean low mintage. Sometimes rarity comes from condition, errors, varieties, or historical context, and the 1976 penny has all four. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, a design originally created by sculptor Victor David Brenner in 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the motto "In God We Trust." The date 1976 appears to the right, with a small D mint mark just below it, showing the coin was made in Denver. On the reverse, you see the Lincoln Memorial, with tiny statues of Lincoln visible between the columns if you look closely. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, and below it is the denomination 1 cent. This reverse design was introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and would remain in use for nearly 50 years. The metal composition is one of the most important features of this coin. The 1976 penny weighs about 3.11 grams and is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. That makes it heavier than modern pennies, which weigh only about 2.5 grams. This difference alone can help collectors quickly identify older copper cents. And copper coins are often preferred by collectors because of their richer color, heavier feel, and historical connection to earlier American coinage. But what really makes the 1976 D penny interesting isn't just how it looks, it's what went wrong with some of them. Even though billions were struck, the mint was operating at incredibly high speeds to meet demand. That means mistakes happened. And when mistakes happen on coins, collectors pay attention. One of the most desirable errors found on 1976 D pennies is the double die variety. This happens when the coin die receives a misaligned impression during manufacturing, causing parts of the design, usually the date or lettering, to appear doubled. On some 1976 D cents, you can see doubling in the words "In God We Trust" or in the numbers of the date. The doubling isn't always dramatic, but under magnification, it becomes clear that something unusual happened. Another error collectors look for is the off-center strike. These coins were struck incorrectly, leaving part of the design missing and the blank edge visible. Depending on how far off-center the strike is, these coins can range from mildly interesting to highly valuable. There are also clipped planchet errors, where part of the metal blank was improperly cut before striking, leaving a curved or straight missing section on the coin. These errors are genuine mint mistakes and can't be easily faked when properly examined. And then there are broad strikes, where the coin was struck without the collar that normally shapes the edge, causing the coin to spread outward and appear wider and flatter than normal. All of these error types exist among 1976 D pennies, and while they're not common, they are absolutely real, and some have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and condition of the error. But even without errors, condition alone can turn this everyday penny into something special. Most 1976 D pennies were heavily circulated. They passed through vending machines, pockets, cash registers, and piggy banks for decades. That means finding one today in truly pristine condition, especially with full original luster and no wear, is surprisingly difficult. In coin grading, uncirculated coins are graded on a scale from MS60 to MS70, with MS70 being nearly perfect. While many 1976 D cents survive in low uncirculated grades, coins graded MS67 or higher are extremely scarce. And this is where things get interesting. A 1976 D penny in average circulated condition is worth exactly 1 cent. In lightly worn condition, maybe 2 or 3 cents. In uncirculated condition, perhaps 10 to 25 cents. But once you enter the highest certified grades, the value jumps dramatically. Certified examples graded MS67 red have sold for several $100s. And top population examples, coins with the highest known grades for that date, have sold for over $1,000 at auction. In one well-known sale, a 1976 D Lincoln cent graded MS67 red by a major grading service sold for over $1,500. That's for a coin that once bought nothing more than a stick of gum, and today sits in a plastic holder as a prized collector piece. Error coins push the value even higher. Some double die examples have sold for several $100s. Dramatic off-center strikes have brought prices between $250 and $1,000 depending on eye appeal and how much of the design remains visible. Rare clipped planchets in strong condition have sold for similar amounts. This is why collectors still check their change, not because every penny is valuable, but because the rare ones are hiding in plain sight. So how can you tell if you might have a valuable 1976 D penny? Start with the basics. Check the date and mint mark. You want to see 1976 with a small d beneath the date. Then look at the color. A bright reddish-orange color usually indicates a well-preserved copper surface, while dull brown coins typically show wear or oxidation. Next, weigh the coin if you can. A genuine 1976 copper penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. If it weighs significantly less, Something may be off, either damage, corrosion, or in rare cases, an unusual mint error. Then examine the coin under magnification. Look closely at the date and lettering. Are the edges of the letters sharp and clean, or do they show doubling, thickness, or shadow-like outlines? True doubled dies will show separation lines and rounded secondary images, not just blurry or flat shapes caused by wear. Check the edges. A normal penny has a smooth, uniform edge. If you see missing sections, strange shapes, or uneven thickness, you may be looking at a clipped planchet or broad strike. Also look at the strike quality. Weak details, especially in Lincoln's hair or the columns of the memorial, can indicate a poor strike, which isn't necessarily valuable by itself, but combined with other factors, it can make a coin more interesting to collectors. And finally, watch for signs of tampering. Fake errors exist. Some people try to create artificial doubling or remove parts of coins using tools. Genuine mint errors usually show smooth metal flow and natural-looking surfaces. Anything that looks rough, scratched, or filed is usually damage, not a collectible error. Now here's something most people don't realize. The year 1976 was one of the most emotionally significant years in American history. It marked the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The Mint released special designs for quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins to celebrate the bicentennial, but not for the penny. The Lincoln cent kept its regular design, quietly circulating alongside the flashy commemorative coins of the era. That makes the 1976 penny something of a silent witness to one of America's most patriotic years. A coin that didn't shout celebration, but still carried the nation's history in every pocket. Another fascinating detail is that many Americans hoarded coins in the 1970s because of rising metal prices. People believed copper pennies might soon be worth more melted down than as money, so they saved them in jars, bags, and boxes. This means millions of 1976 D pennies still sit untouched in old collections, estate boxes, and forgotten drawers, waiting to be rediscovered. Collectors also love the 1976 D penny because it represents the end of an era. Just 6 years later, in 1982, the Mint officially switched to copper-plated zinc cents, forever changing how pennies felt, sounded, and aged. Many collectors consider Pennies 1,982 copper cents more satisfying to collect, heavier, richer in color, and more connected to America's older coinage traditions. There's also something deeply appealing about the idea that a coin made in massive quantities can still hide rare gems. It reminds collectors that treasure doesn't always look like gold or silver. Sometimes, it looks like a penny you almost didn't bother to pick up. Even professional coin dealers have stories of discovering high-grade 1970s cents in rolls bought from banks or in collections inherited from relatives who simply saved coins without realizing their future value. In some cases, a few cents turned into thousands of dollars, not through luck, but through patience, knowledge, and careful observation. And that's what makes the 1976 D penny so special. It's not famous because of one legendary error or dramatic design. It's famous because it teaches collectors a powerful lesson. Rarity isn't always about how many coins were made. It's about how many survived in exceptional condition and how many escaped unnoticed manufacturing mistakes. Today, collectors continue searching for top-grade examples, doubled dies, and dramatic mint errors from this year. Coin grading services still certify new finds. Auction records continue to update. And every time someone checks a jar of old change, there's a small but real chance that a valuable 1976 D penny is sitting right there, overlooked for decades. So the next time you see a 1976 penny with a tiny D beneath the date, don't dismiss it. Hold it up to the light. Turn it over. Look at the details. Because that small copper coin carries the story of America's bicentennial era, the final years of solid copper cents, and the fascinating world of mint errors and condition rarity. all packed into a piece of metal worth 1 cent on the surface, but sometimes worth far more beneath. And that's what makes coin collecting so exciting. Not the guarantee of riches, but the possibility. The idea that history, value, and surprise can be hiding in the most ordinary places. So keep looking, keep checking, because sometimes the rarest discoveries aren't locked in vaults or museums. Sometimes they're sitting quietly in your pocket, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Most people would walk past this coin without a second thought. But what if I told you that a single penny from 1985, struck at the Denver Mint, could be hiding a story of American history, rare mistakes, and surprising collector value, all inside something that once bought a stick of gum? Today, we're diving into the 1985 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have handled, spent, and forgotten. Yet some versions of this humble cent have quietly become collectibles worth far more than their face value. And the most interesting part is this: many of them are still out there, hiding in jars, drawers, and old wallets across the country. The 1985 D Lincoln penny is a 1 cent coin produced by the United States Mint at its Denver facility, which is why it carries the small D mint mark just below the date on the front. It features President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a design that had been used for decades and had become one of the most recognizable images in American money. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary, but as with many coins, the real story lies beneath the surface. To understand this penny, we need to step back into the mid-1980s. In 1985, the United States was experiencing economic growth after a tough decade of inflation and uncertainty. The mint was producing massive quantities of coins to meet everyday demand, especially pennies, which were still widely used for small purchases, parking meters, vending machines, and exact change. That year, the Denver Mint alone struck more than 5 billion Lincoln cents. That number is so large it's hard to imagine. It means that nearly 1 out of every 3 pennies made in the United States in 1985 came from Denver. These coins were meant to circulate fast, wear down, and eventually disappear into everyday commerce. None were intended to become rare treasures, but history has a way of surprising us. By 1985, the Lincoln cent had already undergone major changes compared to earlier decades. Since 1982, pennies were no longer made primarily from copper. Instead, they were made from zinc coated with a thin layer of copper. Rising copper prices had made the old metal composition too expensive, so the mint switched to a cheaper alternative that looked the same but weighed less. This means the 1985 D penny weighs about 2.5 grams instead of the 3.11 grams of older copper cents. To the average person, this difference meant nothing, but to collectors, it marked a new era in the Lincoln cent series, one where manufacturing shortcuts sometimes led to strange errors, unusual surfaces, and collectible variations. The front of the coin features Abraham Lincoln's right-facing portrait, originally designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909. It shows Lincoln in calm, thoughtful detail, surrounded by the words "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date, with the small D mint mark beneath the year. On the back is the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making this one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. While the design itself hadn't changed much by 1985, the quality of strikes, metal composition, and minting conditions had, and that's where things start getting interesting. Most 1985 D pennies are common and worth only face value in worn condition, but not all of them. Some examples stand out due to minting errors, unusual surfaces, or exceptionally high quality. These special coins are what collectors search for, and in some cases, pay surprising amounts to own. One of the most sought-after varieties from this year is the 1985 double die obverse penny. On these coins, parts of the lettering and date appear doubled, especially in the words Liberty and In God We Trust. This doubling isn't damage or wear. It happens during the minting process when the die used to strike the coin receives a misaligned impression. When that faulty die strikes blanks, it transfers that doubling to every coin it produces. A genuine double die 1985 penny can sell for hundreds of dollars in circulated condition, and much more in higher grades. These coins are rare compared to normal issues, and many people spend them unknowingly because they don't realize what they're holding. Another collectible version is the 1985 D penny with off-center strikes. These coins were not properly aligned during striking, resulting in part of the design being shifted toward one edge. The more dramatic the shift, especially if the date and mint mark remain visible, the more valuable the coin becomes. There are also examples of clipped planchets, where part of the metal blank was missing before striking, leaving a curved or straight missing section along the edge. These unusual shapes instantly catch the eye and are popular among error coin collectors. Then there are broad strikes, where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar, causing it to spread out wider than normal and lose its raised rim. These coins look flattened and oversized, and while not extremely rare, they are collectible and can sell for solid premiums. But errors aren't the only way a 1985 D penny becomes valuable. Condition matters greatly. A typical circulated example might be worth 1 cent, but a pristine coin that looks almost exactly as it did the day it left the mint can be worth many times more. Professional grading services use a scale from 1 to 70 to measure a coin's condition. Coins graded MS65 and higher, meaning mint state, with no wear and strong eye appeal, can sell for $10 to $40. In MS67 condition, prices can jump into the hundreds. And in rare cases where coins achieve MS68 or higher, auction prices can reach into the thousands. One of the highest recorded sales for a 1985 D Lincoln Cent graded MS68 sold for over $1,000 at auction. That's not because the coin was rare in quantity, but because it was rare in perfection. With billions struck, finding one with nearly flawless surfaces, strong luster, and perfect details becomes surprisingly difficult. The zinc-based composition of these coins makes them especially prone to spotting, bubbling, and corrosion over time. That means truly pristine examples become harder to find every year, increasing their appeal to collectors who specialize in high-grade modern coins. Now let's talk about how to tell if you might have a valuable 1985 D penny. First, check the mint mark. Look just below the date on the front of the coin. If you see a small D, it was minted in Denver. No mint mark means Philadelphia, and an S would indicate San Francisco, usually proof coins. Next, look closely at the lettering. Use a magnifying glass or your phone camera and zoom in on the words Liberty and In God We Trust. If the letters appear doubled, especially with clear separation and not just blurry edges, you might have a doubled die coin. Then examine the edges and shape. Does the coin look off-center? Is part of the design missing or shifted? Is the rim unusually wide or uneven? These could indicate striking errors that increase value. Also pay attention to weight. A standard 1985 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it weighs significantly more or less, it could be struck on the wrong planchet, which is another type of error collectors seek. Surface condition matters too. Look for bright original color, smooth surfaces, and sharp details. Coins with heavy scratches, corrosion, or dull surfaces are usually worth less, while clean, shiny examples can command higher prices. When it comes to fakes, the good news is that counterfeit 1985 pennies are extremely rare because the base coin is common and low value. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to create fake double dies by carving or tooling letters, or they might alter mint marks. Genuine double dies show smooth, rounded doubling, while altered coins often show sharp, uneven lines or tool marks under magnification. If you think you've found something special, professional coin grading services can authenticate and grade your coin, confirming whether it's genuine and helping establish its market value. One fun and surprising fact about the 1985 D penny is how it reflects a major turning point in U.S. coinage. These zinc cents represent the modern era of American money, lighter, cheaper, and more industrially produced than earlier copper coins. Many collectors prefer the older copper cents, but others see modern zinc pennies as an entirely new category, especially when it comes to errors and high-grade specimens. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design used on this coin would soon disappear. In 2009, the Mint replaced it with special bicentennial reverse designs, and in 2010 introduced the Union Shield reverse. That makes the 1985 D penny part of the final generation of memorial cents, coins that marked the end of a long design era stretching back to the 1950s. It's also worth noting that many collectors enjoy building complete year-end mint sets of Lincoln cents. That means they need examples from Philadelphia, Denver, and sometimes San Francisco for every year. Even common dates like 1985D become important pieces in these collections, especially in high condition. What makes this coin especially appealing is that it's still accessible. Unlike rare gold coins or early American coppers that cost thousands of dollars, the 1985 D penny gives everyday people a chance to participate in coin collecting. You can search pocket change, old jars, rolls from the bank, or family coin collections and realistically find one. And while most will be common, the thrill lies in the possibility that one might be special. Collectors love this coin not because it's legendary or ancient, but because it represents the hidden potential of everyday money. It reminds people that valuable coins don't always come from treasure chests or shipwrecks. Sometimes they come from grocery store change or forgotten piggy banks. The 1985 D Lincoln penny also appeals to collectors who enjoy era coins, modern coin grading challenges, and the hunt for perfection. With billions produced, finding one that stands above the rest becomes a meaningful accomplishment, proof that patience and attention to detail can pay off. In auctions today, most circulated examples trade in bulk for face value, but era coins regularly sell for $50, $100, or more depending on the type and severity. High-grade certified coins often bring $100 to $1,000 or more, especially when competition among collectors heats up. These prices show that even modern pennies can hold serious value when the right combination of rarity and condition comes together. And perhaps the most fascinating part of all is that nobody knows how many rare era versions are still out there. Many have likely been spent, damaged, or lost over time. Others may still be sitting unnoticed in collections, drawers, or jars, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely. So the next time you come across a 1985 penny with a small D under the date, don't dismiss it too quickly. Turn it over, look at the details, check the lettering, examine the edges, because what looks like a simple 1-cent coin could actually be a tiny piece of American history and possibly a collector's prize hiding in plain sight. The 1985 D Lincoln penny teaches us something powerful about coins and about life in general. Sometimes the most ordinary things carry extraordinary stories, and sometimes value isn't obvious at first glance. It waits patiently for someone to notice. If you've got old pennies at home, now might be the perfect time to take a closer look, because the next great discovery could already be in your pocket, and it might just be a 1985 D Lincoln penny. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But what if I told you that a small copper coin from 1997, one you might still have in a jar at home, could quietly hold a story far bigger than its 1-cent face value? Today, we're uncovering the true story of the 1997 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary coin. It's brown or copper-colored, shows Abraham Lincoln on the front, and has the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But behind this simple design is a fascinating chapter in American coin history, along with a few surprises that continue to excite collectors even today. The D Mint mark means this penny was made at the Denver Mint. In 1997, billions of pennies were produced across the United States, and the Denver Mint alone struck more than 3.5 billion Lincoln cents that year. That makes the 1997 D penny one of the most widely circulated coins of the modern era. But sometimes, rarity doesn't come from how few coins were made. It comes from small mistakes, special conditions, or hidden details that most people never notice. To understand this coin, we need to step back and look at what was happening in 1997. The United States was in the middle of a strong economy. Gas prices were low, the internet was growing, and people were spending more cash than ever. Pennies were still heavily used in everyday transactions, so the U.S. Mint had to produce massive quantities just to keep up with demand. That's why the Lincoln cent presses were running non-stop at facilities like Denver. The Lincoln penny itself had already been in circulation for nearly 90 years by then. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 1997, the design was familiar to almost every American. On the front, you see Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above him, Liberty on the left, and the date on the right. Beneath the date sits the small D mint mark, showing it came from Denver. On the back is the Lincoln Memorial, a design first used in 1959. If you look closely at the steps of the memorial, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside. It's one of the smallest detailed portraits ever placed on a circulating U.S. coin, and most people never notice it without magnification. The 1997 D penny is made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper coating. By this time, the U.S. Mint had switched away from solid copper pennies, which were heavier and more expensive to produce. The modern zinc core made the coin lighter and cheaper, but it also meant the penny was more vulnerable to corrosion if the copper layer became damaged. At face value, a circulated 1997 D penny is worth exactly 1 cent. But in the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. Coins that were never used in circulation, called uncirculated coins, can be worth much more, especially if they are in near-perfect shape. And that's where this penny starts to become interesting. Most 1997 D pennies were handled, spent, scratched, and worn down over time. But a small number were preserved in mint condition, either pulled straight from bank rolls or saved by collectors. These coins show sharp details, strong luster, and no visible wear. And among them, a tiny percentage reach the highest grading levels, which is where real collector value appears. Professional grading services examine coins under magnification and assign them a numerical grade based on their condition. For modern pennies, anything graded MS67 or higher is considered extremely high quality. These coins are not rare in terms of how many were made, but they are rare in terms of how many survived in flawless condition. In recent years, some 1997 D pennies graded at the very top levels have sold for surprising prices at auction. One example graded MS69 red, which is almost unheard of for a circulating penny, sold for several $1,000s. Even coins graded MS67 or MS68 can sell for anywhere from $50 to several $100s, depending on demand and eye appeal. That may not sound like life-changing money, but for a coin originally worth 1 cent, it's an incredible return. But condition isn't the only factor that makes certain 1997 D pennies valuable. Errors and varieties also play a major role. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin-making process, and these mistakes can turn an ordinary penny into a collector treasure. One known error involving the 1997 D penny is off-center strikes. This happens when the blank coin isn't properly aligned in the press, causing part of the design to be missing. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, these coins can sell for $20, $50, or even more. Another type of error is the broad strike, where the coin is struck without the retaining collar that normally gives it its edge. This causes the coin to spread out, appearing wider and thinner than normal. These errors are eye-catching and collectible. There are also clipped planchets, where part of the metal blank is missing before the coin is struck. These coins appear to have a curved chunk missing from the edge and can bring strong premiums from collectors who specialize in mint errors. Perhaps the most exciting and rarest type of error is a double die. This happens when the coin die itself is misaligned during production, creating doubled letters or numbers on the coin. While no major double die variety has been officially confirmed for the 1997 D penny at the same level as famous examples like the 1955 double die cent, collectors continue searching, and minor double die examples do exist. These can sell for anywhere from $10 to over $100 depending on clarity and condition. So how can you tell if you might have a valuable 1997 D penny? First, check the date and mint mark. The date should read 1997, and the small letter D should appear below the date on the front of the coin. If there's no mint mark, the coin was made in Philadelphia instead, and that's a different variety. Next, look at the condition. Is the coin bright and shiny with no visible wear? Do Lincoln's hair details look sharp? Are the letters crisp and clear? The better the condition, the better the chance the coin could be worth more than face value. Then inspect for errors. Look for doubling on the letters in Liberty, In God We Trust, or the date. Check the edges to see if the coin looks wider or oddly shaped. Look for missing letters, weak strikes, or unusual textures. Even small abnormalities can make a big difference. As for fakes, modern pennies like the 1997 D are rarely counterfeited because the face value is so low. However, altered coins do exist. Sometimes people try to modify dates or add mint marks to create the illusion of a rare variety. The best way to protect yourself is to use a magnifying glass and compare your coin to known authentic examples. If you think you've found something special, a professional coin dealer or grading service can verify it. Now here's something surprising. Despite being struck in massive numbers, the 1997 D penny represents the final years of the classic Lincoln Memorial reverse design. Just 12 years later, in 2009, the mint replaced it with special bicentennial designs, and in 2010, the shield reverse was introduced. That makes coins like the 1997 D part of the closing chapter of a design that lasted half a century. Another interesting fact is that the zinc core of modern pennies means that damaged examples often turn gray or bubble if moisture gets inside. That's why high-grade survivors are much harder to find than you might expect. Millions were made, but very few stayed perfect. Collectors also appreciate the 1997 D penny because it represents a time when coins were still heavily used in everyday life. Before mobile payments and digital wallets, cash was king, and pennies changed hands constantly. Each coin tells a quiet story of groceries bought, gas paid for, and everyday moments across America. There's also something deeply appealing about the idea that a coin worth 1 cent could secretly be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. That sense of hidden treasure is what draws so many people into coin collecting. It turns pocket change into a hunt, a game of discovery, where knowledge becomes the most valuable tool of all. Even for collectors who know the 1997 D penny isn't typically rare, it still holds importance as a modern issue that rewards careful searching. It teaches a key lesson in numismatics. Rarity doesn't always come from age. Sometimes it comes from condition, mistakes, or timing. And there's something else that makes this penny special. Unlike ancient coins locked away in museums or rare gold pieces stored in vaults, the 1997 D penny is accessible. Anyone can find one. You might have one in your wallet, your couch cushions, or a forgotten jar in the kitchen. That accessibility makes the thrill of discovery even stronger. So imagine this. Somewhere right now, a near-perfect 1997 D penny is sitting in a drawer, untouched for decades, waiting for someone to notice its shine, its sharp details, and its potential. And when that person finally looks closely, they won't just see a penny, they'll see a small piece of American history, frozen in metal. Collectors today love the 1997 D penny not because it's rare in the traditional sense, but because it represents possibility. It reminds us that even the most ordinary objects can become extraordinary under the right conditions. It's a symbol of how attention, patience, and curiosity can turn something small into something meaningful. And that's the real story behind this coin. Not just its metal, or its mint mark, or its auction prices, but its journey. From the roaring presses of the Denver Mint, to everyday pockets across the country, to collectors' albums and grading holders, the 1997 D penny has lived a life far bigger than its 1 cent value suggests. So the next time you see a penny on the ground, don't walk past it. Pick it up, turn it over, check the date. Look for that tiny D because sometimes the most unassuming coins carry the biggest surprises. And you never know. The next great discovery in American coin collecting might already be sitting in your change jar, waiting for you to notice. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple brown penny, and discovering it might be worth far more than 1 cent. A coin you've probably seen hundreds of times, maybe even spent without a second thought. But what if one ordinary-looking penny from 2002 could carry a hidden story, collector demand, and even surprising value? Today, we're diving into the 2002 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks just like any other modern cent. Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, copper color, familiar shape. But behind that everyday design is a fascinating chapter of American coin history and a few rare surprises that have turned some of these pennies into collector treasures. Let's start with what this coin actually is. The 2002 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, which began in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. By 2002, the design had already been in use for over 40 years, with Lincoln's portrait on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. These pennies were struck in huge numbers, and most people still see them as nothing more than spare change. When a penny has no mint mark, it means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Coins made in Denver carry a small D, and those from San Francisco usually have an S. But Philadelphia traditionally used no mint mark on most coins for many decades, including cents in 2002. So when collectors say 2002 no mint mark penny, they're talking about a Philadelphia issue. Now let's step back into the early 2000s and understand why this coin exists in the first place. The year 2002 was a time when cash was still king. Debit cards were growing, but people still used coins every day for vending machines, parking meters, and everyday purchases. The U.S. Mint needed massive quantities of pennies to keep the economy running smoothly. That year alone, billions of Lincoln cents were produced across the country. Philadelphia struck over 3 billion pennies in 2002. That's more than enough to wrap around the earth several times if laid edge to edge. These coins were not meant to be rare. They were designed to circulate heavily, get worn down, and eventually disappear into jars, couches, and forgotten drawers. But history has a funny way of turning ordinary objects into collectibles. The Lincoln cent design used in 2002 dates back to 1959, when the Lincoln Memorial replaced the wheat ears on the reverse side. This design honored Lincoln not just as a person, but also as a symbol of national unity. If you look closely at the memorial on the back, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the building, making this one of the few U.S. coins that shows the same person on both sides. In 2002, the U.S. Mint was still using the same composition that began in 1982. Instead of solid copper, these pennies were made mostly of zinc, with a thin outer layer of copper. Specifically, they are about 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. This change was made to reduce costs, since copper had become too expensive for mass production. So while the 2002 penny looks like copper, inside it's mostly zinc. This detail becomes important later when we talk about errors and unusual varieties. On the front of the coin, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right. The word liberty appears behind his head, and the date 2002 is in front of his face. Above him you'll find In God We Trust. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with United States of America and 1 cent framing the building. Simple, familiar, almost boring, but here's where things get interesting. Most 2002 no-mint mark pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. You can walk into a store today and spend one without anyone blinking. But a small number of these coins stand out because of minting errors, unusual conditions, or exceptional preservation. And those are the coins collectors chase. Let's talk about what makes a 2002 penny rare or valuable. First, condition matters more than almost anything else. A penny that's been circulating for 20 years, with scratches, dull color, and worn details, is usually worth face value. But a coin that never circulated, one that looks brand new with bright red copper color and sharp details, can be worth significantly more to collectors. In the coin world, these are called mint state coins. A high-grade mint state 2002 no-mint mark penny can sell for several dollars, and in top condition, sometimes much more. While that may not sound life-changing, it's impressive for a coin that originally cost just 1 cent. But the real excitement comes from error coins. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin-making process. A blank planchet might be defective, the die might be damaged, the coin might be struck twice or off-center. Most errors are caught and destroyed, but a few escape into circulation. And when they do, collectors pay attention. One of the most sought-after errors for modern Lincoln cents is the doubled die. This happens when the coin die receives a misaligned impression during its creation, causing parts of the design to appear doubled on the finished coin. On a doubled die penny, you might see doubling on the date, the words Liberty, or In God We Trust. Some 2002 no-mint mark pennies have been discovered with noticeable doubling, and depending on the strength and clarity of the doubling, these can sell for anywhere from tens of dollars to several $100s. Another valuable error is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank coin is not properly positioned during striking, resulting in part of the design missing and blank metal visible on one side. If the date is still readable and the off-center strike is dramatic, collectors may pay significant premiums. There are also broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the collar that normally shapes it, causing it to spread out wider than normal. These errors look odd and slightly distorted, making them appealing to collectors who specialize in mint mistakes. Even more unusual are wrong planchet errors. Occasionally, a penny blank might be made of the wrong metal or wrong thickness. While extremely rare for modern cents, examples have surfaced in the past where pennies were struck on foreign coin blanks or experimental metals. A verified wrong planchet 2002 penny would be considered a major discovery and could command a very high price. Now let's talk about real-world value examples. Most circulated 2002 no-mint mark pennies sell for 1 cent. That's the honest truth. Even nice circulated examples might only bring 2 or 3 cents in bulk lots. But uncirculated examples, especially those graded by professional services, can sell for more. High-grade specimens graded MS67 or higher have sold at auction for anywhere from $50 to over $200, depending on color, strike quality, and demand at the time of sale. These are coins that look almost perfect under magnification, with no visible wear and strong luster. Era coins are where the real money is. A strong doubled die 2002 penny with clear doubling on the date and lettering can sell for $100 to $500 or more, depending on condition and visibility. Off-center strikes with dramatic displacement and a visible date have sold for $50 to $300. Broad strikes and other unusual errors can bring anywhere from $20 to $150 or higher. These are not everyday finds, but they do exist, and collectors continue to search rolls of pennies from banks hoping to discover one. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 2002 no mint mark penny? First, look at the date and mint mark area. If there is no letter under the date, it's a Philadelphia coin. That part is normal. Next, examine the condition. Does the coin look shiny and new or dull and worn? Sharp details and bright color are good signs. Then, grab a magnifying glass or phone camera and look closely at the lettering and numbers. Check the word Liberty, the phrase "In God We Trust," and the date. Do any of the letters or numbers appear doubled, thicker than normal, or shadowed? True doubling will look like a second image, not just a blurry edge. Next, look at the edges and shape of the coin. Is it perfectly round? Or does it look stretched, oval, or uneven? That could indicate a broad strike or off-center strike. Check if any part of the design is missing or cut off. That's another sign of a possible mint error. Also, weigh the coin if you can. A normal 2002 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly heavier or lighter, it could be on the wrong planchet, which is rare but extremely valuable. Now, let's talk about fakes. Believe it or not, even modern pennies can be faked or altered. Some people try to create fake doubled dies by engraving or damaging coins. Others may alter dates or mint marks. A common trick is adding a mint mark where none should exist, or trying to make normal wear look like doubling. Real doubled die errors will show clean, rounded doubling that matches the original design, not jagged scratches or tool marks. If you think you've found something special, it's best to have it authenticated by a professional coin grading service or show it to a reputable coin dealer. Never clean your coin. Cleaning can destroy its value instantly, even if it's rare. Collectors want coins in original condition, with natural surfaces and color. Even gentle rubbing can leave microscopic scratches that lower the grade. Now let's move into some fun and surprising facts about the 2002 Lincoln penny. One interesting detail is that this was just a few years before the Lincoln cent design changed forever. In 2009, the U.S. Mint released special bicentennial designs on the reverse, and in 2010, the Lincoln Memorial was replaced with the Union Shield. That means the 2002 penny is part of the final decade of the classic memorial design that millions of Americans grew up with. Another surprising fact is how many people unknowingly throw away valuable era coins. Pennies are often ignored, tossed into jars, or left in drawers. Because of that, some rare era coins may still be sitting in circulation, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Also, despite being mostly zinc, the copper plating on these coins can sometimes peel or bubble, creating strange-looking surfaces. While most of these are considered damage rather than true mint errors, some unusual plating errors from this period are collectible and can bring modest premiums. There's also the emotional side of collecting coins like this. For many collectors, the Lincoln cent is the coin that started it all. It's affordable, widely available, and rich with history. People remember searching through change as kids, hoping to find a wheat penny or a shiny new coin. The 2002 penny connects modern collectors to that same tradition. Collectors love the 2002 no mint mark penny, not because it's extremely rare in general, but because it represents the idea that something ordinary can become special. It reminds us that value isn't always obvious at first glance. Sometimes, It's hidden in small details, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. For beginners, this coin is a perfect entry point into the hobby. You can still find them in circulation. You can learn how to grade coins, identify errors, and understand minting history without spending much money. And every once in a while, someone gets lucky and finds a genuinely valuable example. There's also something powerful about holding a coin that passed through countless hands over 2 decades. Maybe it was used to buy coffee. Maybe it sat in a cash register drawer. Maybe it traveled across states in someone's pocket. Now it's in your hand, carrying its own quiet story. So the next time you see a 2002 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it. Take a closer look. Check the details. Look for doubling. Look for odd shapes or unusual weight. You might just be holding something more interesting than you expected. And even if your coin turns out to be worth just 1 cent, you've still gained something valuable. You've learned how to see everyday objects differently. You've learned that history isn't just in museums. Sometimes it's in your pocket. The 2002 no mint mark Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin in America. It may not sell for millions, but it represents a powerful idea in collecting. That rarity is sometimes hidden. That value can be overlooked, and that even the smallest coins can tell big stories. So tonight, when you empty your pockets or sort through an old jar of change, take a moment to look at your pennies, especially the ones dated 2002, because somewhere out there, a rare error coin is still waiting to be found. And the person who finds it might be someone just like you. And that's the real magic of coin collecting. Not just the money, not just the history, but the thrill of discovery, the curiosity, and the possibility that the next ordinary coin you touch could turn out to be something extraordinary.